It honestly pains me to say that Tim Pool is possibly the most influential single political figure on all of YouTube. He has several channels across which he has a cumulative millions of subscribers. On just his main channel, Timcast IRL, he has 1.5 million subscribers, and he doesn't pull, like, insane viewership on his videos or anything. In fact, his viewership on his videos is actually kind of low for a channel of that size, sub-wise, but he uploads so frequently that it all balances out in the end. He does the right-wing model of just flooding the algorithm with low-effort content, and just kind of beating the YouTube meta by doing that, you know? And it's been pretty successful for him. I mean, the guy literally has a company that he runs and is the head of. He's got several, like, interns and employees. He's in a, like, he owns a big compound that he operates his business out of that has a basement skateboard rink. Every time we talk about Tim Pool, I feel the need to bring this up. The fact that, like, this isn't even unique, by the way. I know Tim Pool is, like, the biggest of these conservative pundits, but to give you an idea how much power and wealth these people have behind them, this is just casually the basement of his compound where he runs his podcast out of. This is the basement, part of the basement, I apologize. Not the whole basement, it's not just this room. This is part of the basement. So yeah, like, this is, not gonna lie, it looks super cool. Too bad its owner is one of the biggest grifters online. No, it's super duper cool. I would want, like, a indoor basement shooting range instead, personally, but, like, no, this is super duper cool. My point is, it is not uncommon for right-wing pundits to have so much money at their disposal that they can just afford this stuff. We know Steven Crowder was offered $50 million in a contract by the Daily Wire. There is unfathomable amounts of money being, like, passed around behind the scenes but in these right-wing circles, and Tim Pool is one of the most successful of those people. Now, all of this should kind of bother you because he's also a massive loser who has failed into success. He had, like, the Fresh and Fit guys on his show, I believe, and he said something that I've been asked to react to on stream. Let's watch.
The men are saying, we want something different. We don't want the Instagram hoe that I can fly in overnight just to have a quick, you know.
That is biology.
That's never happening.
That's biology.
With all due respect, that's never.
Yeah.
No,
but hold on.
Like, go ahead.
I agree a lot with what he's saying. Imagine if women are only looking at the top 8, 9, 10 of men.
Yeah.
If guys like you just started shaming women, do they? You know who's paying for OnlyFans, right? It's lower quality guys.
Yeah. 100%.
So if high quality dudes who got really nice watches and pull up in a Bugatti, and this woman's like, "Yeah, I want to come hang with you," and he goes, "So yeah, what's your body count?" And he goes, "How dare you ask me that? I don't want no hoe in my car." And he takes off.
Yeah.
Now she's embarrassed. She got shut down, and more women are going to say, if I want a high value man, because only the guys are going to come after me are going to be high value.
So maybe
let's
flip.
Let's be real here. Though.
Okay, we're going to turn this into the Dreamcast.
Yeah.
So, something I've noticed is that's become more common than ever among incel-adjacent guys, and obviously full-on incel dudes, but even the more, like, adjacent type dudes, is this idea that it's, like, come full circle. At one point, it was incels were dudes who were upset that they could not get laid. And then it became a more politically based ideology around, like, men's rights and, like, social analysis of women having more power in society than men, right? It was all bullshit, but it just kind of transformed over time. And then it became, like, the Andrew Tate style, get bitches and make them work for you in your sex trafficking ring. Here's how. Pay me money to learn. And now it's, like, evolved full circle to the way to be a high-value man is to not only be successful and wealthy and what have you, but to also be... the way they would word it is to be strong enough to resist the urge to have sex with women. Like, the incel ideal man position has gone full circle to being a volcel. They want to be extremely attractive to women, to have very, very attractive women interested in them, but to have the what they don't have now, what they want to have is the privilege of being able to turn down these countless hot women and not have any interest in them because they are just so well off in so many different categories, including relationship-wise fulfillment. That is what they would argue. In reality, it's massive cuck behavior. These are dudes who've gotten so immersed in incel ideology. And I will be honest, a lot of these dudes are not classic incels in that they are like virgin dudes who cannot get laid and cannot get into a relationship. Plenty of these dudes are actually in relationships. Many of these dudes have used Andrew Tate's advice, have some level of money, and have found women that are actually receptive to that type of advice that Andrew Tate gives. And as much as this may surprise you, there are a lot of women out there with very low standards for themselves that will absolutely fall for the type of shit Andrew Tate teaches men to do to pick up women. There are a lot of women out there that'll actually fall for it. Not saying most women will, but there are a lot of women out there that will. And a lot of these guys have relationships, and those relationships validate their beliefs. Tim Pool is not one of them, though. Tim Pool is not one of those dudes who's one of those like misogynistic incel light but in a relationship somehow dudes. Tim Pool is a classic incel, and the reason why he's gotten so familiar with the fresh and fit guys, Just Pearly Things, and these other professional misogynists is because if you go back just literally a couple years ago and look at what Tim Pool was saying about relationships, let's just say he wasn't as afraid to be mask off about the state of his dating life. And, let's just take a look at this clip.
I can't possibly have babies because of climate change. You know?
Right, which is nonsense.
No, of
But I
course.
do think it's crazy that I'm about to be 34 and I have no family. Because my dad had 2 kids by the time he was 27.
Yep.
And I'm like, man, you know what the problem is, though? It's definitely not me.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's definitely not me.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's everybody else.
Yeah.
I feel like I don't know how to respond to that because saying it's not me, it's everybody else is the most on its face ridiculous statement one could ever make. It's literally the meme format where it's the Principal Skinner meme that people translate statements that have been dog whistled out that mean that. They respond with that meme. But here he just said the meme with a straight face, and the woman he no doubt is paying to be on the show to be a yes woman for him is just like, yeah. Like, why isn't she dating him then? If it's not him, then why isn't she dating him? Yeah, it's the women who are the problem. That's why I can't start a family and find a relationship. Listen, what these guys prey on is a certain level of social anxiety that I feel is mostly unique to men's experience. And while it's not uniquely awful, it's unique. The problem itself is unique, and that's why I think a lot of men find themselves getting radicalized by these far-right, incel, Andrew Tate type figures, because there aren't a lot of figures on the left that are men who are willing to talk about this shit because it's easy to be misconstrued, misrepresented, and canceled. And 2, because, if you're a woman, then you're probably not as familiar with this. I think that a lot of guys, and I used to think like this, and it took a lot of growing up to break out of this mindset, which is why I think a lot of these dudes are probably under 21 years old, under 21, 22 years old, if I were to guess, which is pretty young. I think a lot of younger guys are still very mentally undeveloped, generally speaking, in regards to their views on women and relationships, even if subconsciously. And I think the best way to put this bias, this view into words, is that I think a lot of guys subconsciously view themselves as only mattering and only being valuable as a male if they are the best specimen of a male. And I think a lot of guys deep down even if they don't admit it to themselves out loud, think of themselves as such. And when that idea is challenged in any way, it hurts their ego badly. So they seek out figures that are able to put on a character like Andrew Tate, who feels so unreal and out of this world that if you were to model yourself after a figure like this, then surely you would be that ideal specimen of a male. I think this usually comes about when a lot of guys go through their first like breakup or rejection, or more commonly cheating. Like, I think a lot of guys will go through one relationship and get cheated on by a girl, and this will heavily paint their opinion of women. They'll start to seek out validation of their emotional beliefs that they'll have in that moment. I've seen I've seen a lot of guys that will go through a breakup and then go to different internet communities where they will allow the anger about the breakup to fester. And usually that's where a lot of this incel, like, politically misogynistic ideas come from. Is cheating that common? I mean, it's hard to statistically measure because how many people are going to admit to cheating? I do know, I think the last study that I saw did say that women admit to cheating more than men do. Granted, that's admitting, but that would indicate that women are maybe not necessarily more likely to cheat, but more likely to be open and honest about it after cheating, which a lot of incels have used to suggest that women are more inclined to cheating, or even that women are more inclined to cheating and they are less inclined to even feel guilty about it. It's a misogynistic idea, but they'll try to cherry pick data and usually anecdotes in order to construct this narrative. Vosh did a segment on how left-leaning women should stop settling for right-wing guys. Fucking base, dude. Yeah, I think I was in chat when he did that, and I said, shoe on head catching strays, and then I think Vosh responded to it by saying, well, I don't think she's catching strays here. It's more of a direct hit. I was like, damn, okay. No, like, I do legitimately think that. To be fair, this doesn't really apply to shoe on head as much because she is politically incoherent, but I mean, that is a stereotype that exists. Like, I think it's more common. Okay, so I've heard several friends of mine who are black and several friends of mine who are trans describe this type of woman. She's white, she's liberal, and she's dating a conservative, and she says something along the lines of, don't worry, my boyfriend's a little iffy about black people, or my boyfriend's a little iffy about trans people. He may misgender you. He may not use your pronouns. He might use slurs or say some pretty iffy stuff, but he's really a good guy if you get to know him. You know? Like, I've met several people, part of, like, marginalized groups, who have talked about the liberal ally white woman who's dating a massive bigot and makes excuses for said boyfriend's behavior to said marginalized person and expects them to be fine with that. That's not an uncommon thing. Gross, you just described my mom? Yeah. There's just it's pretty common. Bottom behavior? Yeah, I do unironically think that sexual kink more here's what I will say. 100% of the time, the lefty white women who date these conservative men are always bottoms, 100% of the time. I'm not saying all lefty bottoms are a risk of becoming this, but all of them are lefty bottoms. Like subs or whatever. Like, if your boyfriend is politically a piece of shit and you date him, you're also a piece of shit. Yeah. I mean, well, I don't know if it goes that far, but I think it indicates that you don't care as much about the issues you claim to care about than you say you do. I wouldn't go that far. I do think tolerance of that is lowering. I have found that lately I've seen a lot less of acceptance of that, but yeah, I would say, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but these incel guys desperately rely on the validation of even a single woman saying their ideas have merit to legitimize them. And there are some awful women out there, just like there are awful men. And there are plenty of those awful women out there that are willing to promote misogyny in exchange for money. You'll notice that when we watch people like Just Pearly Things is a perfect example, but she does it as like a career. But when you watch like Fresh and Fit or any of these dedicated right-wing incel anti-woman podcasts, they always have a group of like 20-year-old dolled up Instagram models on there to either argue with, and the women they argue with are always like just the biggest space cadets you've ever seen. Like, they must have gone on the street and tried to find, like, they honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they specifically go out on the street and do that thing they like to do where they find like one girl who can't name 3 countries off the top of her head, and then they bring her on and they'll debate a girl like that, and then they'll bring on like 3 women who are Instagram models that agree with them or are paid to agree with them. And the guys who watch that see these very attractive women agreeing with the guys they're watching, and they see that as the biggest validation there ever could be. Any other woman who then tries to argue against those beliefs will just look like they're trying to toe the line, the woman line or whatever. They see the women that go on these shows, people like Just Pearly Things, as traitors to the woman agenda or whatever, the feminist agenda, that are saying it how it is, despite the fact that, you know, it could end up hurting their ability to benefit from the evils of feminism or whatever. It's truly deranged. It really, really is. And Tim Pool is one of the biggest proponents of it these days.